Guess who's back? I'm back again. I am back and tell a friend. And guess what I have? I have Jane Eyre. Look at this monster. Never read it. Don't know that much about it. But I do know that somebody is locked in a... attic. And I do know that maybe somebody goes crazy, and I do know that is the Gothic era of literature. And this crazy... Oh, I've got an idea. Hold on. Wait. So this is my spookiest Gothic era shirt that I have right now, but I think I might get into Gothic era outfits while we're into this book. It'll just get more Gothic-ier and Gothic-ier. I did learn that the Gothic era of history is based on the architecture from the 12th to the 17th centuries. But Gothic literature in the late 18th to early 19th century is an homage to the ooky spooky architecture abbeys. Just read Northanger Abbey. That was my last Jane Austen book. So I have a plan. I'm going to read this because it'll get us into spooky season. And then I'm going to read Frankenstein. Look at that. Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Because it's another female author and I've never read it. And I love Young Frankenstein. I will be doing a project to try and bring Young Frankenstein back to streaming. I don't know if that's like the devil work. I don't know if that sounds like devil work to people, but it must be streamable. It's a funny movie by Mel Brooks, and I love it. And I love Gene Wilder. I just love it all. And right now it's August 2025, which means C.W. Stone King comes onto my Spotify, which means Neutral Milk Hotel comes onto my Spotify. It also means Devotchka. I just start listening to those on repeat because it brings me into the fall season. Let's do a little, because you know these books. These, who is this? Penguin Classics. You know they have every little bit of detail and a timeline about Charlotte Bronte. Born in 1816 in April, the third child of Patrick and Maria Bronte, born at Thornton, Yorkshire. A child, Patrick II. Emily Bronte, who was also a writer, and Anne Bronte, who I think was also a writer. Mrs. Bronte dies in 1821. Charlotte, let's see. Death of Maria from tuberculosis in 1825. Death of Elizabeth from tuberculosis. Charlotte and Emily are removed from school in 1825. Wow. Everything. Also check out John Green's book called Everything is Tuberculosis. Let's see. Anne dies of tuberculosis in 1849. And let's see. Charlotte marries Nichols in 1854. And then in 1855, she dies from complications during early stages of pregnancy. Probably tuberculosis. And then June 7th, which is my birthday of 1861, Patrick Bronte dies. So that's the whole family. Let's read chapter 1 of Jane Eyre. Excited to find out what happens, because I know it's ooky spooky, and I know it's a little mystery gothic-y. I'll just slowly paint my face white. I'll slowly get the little tuberculosis face, which I just heard was like a coveted thing. Like, people thought the tuberculosis look was kind of sexy back in the day. Just learned that. To the note 2, the 3rd edition. I haven't read out loud in like 2 weeks, so we'll see how it goes. I avail myself of the opportunity which a 3rd edition of Jane Eyre affords me. I began addressing a word to the public to explain that my claim to the title of novelist rests on this one work alone. If, therefore, the authorship of other works of fiction has been attributed to me, an honour is awarded where it is not merited, and consequently denied where it is justly due. This explanation will serve to rectify mistakes which may already have been made, and to prevent further errors. Currer Bell, from April 13th, 1848. I don't want to read like too much because I don't want to know what happens, because I feel like there's some sort of like mystery happening. A preface. To the 1st edition of Jane Eyre being unnecessary, I gave none. This 2nd edition demands a few words both of acknowledgement and miscellaneous remark. My thanks are due in 3 quarters. To the public, for the indulgent ear it has inclined to a plain tale with few pretensions. To the press, for the fair field its honest suffrage has opened to an obscure aspirant. To my publishers, for the aid their tact, their energy, their practical sense, and frank liberality have afforded an unknown and unrecommended author. The press and the public are but vague personifications for me, and I must think them in vague terms, but my publishers are definite. So are certain generous critics, who have encouraged me as only large-hearted and high-minded men know how to encourage a struggling stranger. To them, that is, to my publishers and the select reviewers, I say cordially, gentlemen, I thank you from my heart. Because there are no women, right? Currer Bell, who is this person? Having thus acknowledged that I owe those who have aided and approved me, I turn to another classic, a small one, so far as I know, but not, therefore, to be overlooked. I mean the timorous or carping few who doubt the tendency of such books as Jane Eyre, in whose eyes whatever is unusual is wrong, whose ears detect in each protest against bigotry, that parent of crime, an insult to piety, that regent of God on earth. I would suggest to others, to such doubters, certain obvious distinctions. I would remind them of certain simple truths. Conventionality is not morality. Self-righteousness is not religion. To attack the first is not to assail the last. To pluck the mask from the face of the Pharisee is not to lift an impious hand to the crown of thorns. A court of thorn and roses. Okay. These things and deeds are diametrically opposed. They are as distinct as is vice from virtue. Men too often confound them. They should not be confounded. Appearance should not be mistaken for truth. Narrow human doctrines that only tend to elate and magnify a few should not be substituted for the world-redeeming creed of Christ. There is, I repeat it, a difference, and it is a good and not a bad action to mark broadly and clearly the line of separation between them. The world may not like to see these ideas dissevered, for it has been accustomed to blend them, finding it convenient to make external show pass for sterling worth, to let whitewashed walls vouch for clean shrines. Is cleanliness next to godliness? It may hate him who dares to scrutinize and expose, to raise the gilding and show base metal under it, to penetrate the sepulchre and reveal carnal relics, but hate it but hate as it will, it is indebted to him. I have to look up this word. And I'm sorry I don't know every single word. Spell. Sepulcher.
Sepulcher.
Sepulcher. That's exactly what I just said. A small room or monument cut in rock or built of stone in which a dead person is laid. Oh.
Sepulcher.
Oh, to penetrate the sepulcher and reveal the carnal relics. Ooh. Ahab did not like... I have to read Moby Dick now, I think. Micaiah. Because he never prophesied good concerning him, but evil. Probably he liked the sycophant son of Chinana better. Yet might Ahab have escaped a bloody death, had he but stopped his ears to flattery, and opened them to faithful counsel. There is a man in our own days whose words are not framed to tickle delicate ears, who, to my thinking, comes before the great ones of society, much as the son of Imlah came before the throned kings of Judah and Israel, and who speaks truth as deep, with a power as prophet-like and as vital, a mind as dauntless and as daring. It is the satirist of Vanity Fair admired in high places? I cannot tell. But I think of some of those amongst whom he hurls the Greek fire of his sarcasm, and over whom he flashes the levin brand of his denunciation, or to take his warnings in time, they or their seed might yet escape a fatal Ramoth Gilead. Ramoth Gilead. This is all really over my head, and there's all these little numbers next to all these little references that I'd literally have to look up every single one. Why have I alluded to this man? I have alluded to him, reader, because I think I see in him an intellect profounder and more unique than his contemporaries have yet recognized, because I regard him as the first social regenerator of the day, as the very master of that working coal, who would restore to rectitude the rapt system of things. Because I think no commentator on his writings has yet found the comparison that suits him, the terms which rightly characterize his talent. They say he is like Fielding. They talk of his wit, humour, comic powers. He resembles Fielding as an eagle does a vulture. Fielding could stop on carry on, but Thackeray never does. His wit is bright, his humour attractive, but both bear the same relation to his serious genius that the mere lambent sheet lightning playing under the edge of the summer cloud does to the electric death spark hid in its womb. Finally, I have alluded to Mr. Thackeray because of him. Because to him, if he will accept the tribute of a total stranger, I have dedicated the second edition of Jane Eyre. December 21st, 1847. Who is Currer Bell? Okay. Currer Bell. Charlotte Nichols, commonly known as Charlotte Bronte, was an English... Who is it a, Currer Bell? Talk to me. That's what the name she used. I believe they took the name of Bell from Mr. Bell Nichols, a curate that had come to Hawthorne. Okay. Before their deaths, Charlotte Bronte had revealed in her sister's identities to her publisher. Oh, she always went as Currer Bell. Oh. She published it under the name Currer Bell. Is that what it says on the front? No, it says Charlotte Bronte. Okay, and also CB is the, same initials. That's really wild. Do you think they had to do that? Did they have to do that? They didn't, but they did. Let's read chapter 1 of Jane Eyre. Ooh, I'm excited and I get nervous, just like with the Jane Austen novels, that it's like, ooh, it's a different language, and it's like, I do wish Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, that like telephone booth that took, I think that's going to be the new history lesson, is like, let's just go back in time. I would have to be invisible, so invisibility would have to be a thing. Time travel to the past, which sounds like it doesn't happen. Time travel to the future only, because of the quantum whatever. We're going to have to figure out how to go back in time, but also be invisible, and nobody can get us sick, because there was a lot of tuberculosis, it sounds like. Chapter 1 of Jane Eyre. There was no possibility of taking a walk that day. We had been wandering, indeed, in the leafless shrubbery, an hour in the morning. But since dinner, Mrs. Reed, when there was no company, dined early. The cold winter wind had brought with it clouds so sombre and rain so penetrating that further outdoor exercise was now out of the question. I was glad of it. I never liked long walks, especially on chilly afternoons. Dreadful to me was the coming home in the raw twilight, with nipped fingers and toes, and a heart saddened by the chiding of Bessie, the nurse, and humbled by the consciousness of my physical inferiority to Eliza, John, and Georgiana Reed. The said Eliza, John, and Georgiana were now clustered round their mamma in the drawing-room. She lay reclined on a sofa by the fireside, and with her darlings about her, for the time neither quarrelling nor crying, looked perfectly happy. Me she had dispensed from joining the group, saying she regretted to be under the necessity... Oh, whoa, whoa. The light just went out. It's spooky already. Oh my gosh. Spooky light things happening already. Oh. Okay, where was I? Ooh. She regretted to be under the necessity of keeping me at a distance, but until she heard from Bessie, and could discover by her own observation that I was endeavouring in good earnest to acquire a more sociable and childlike disposition, a more attractive and sprightly manner, something lighter, franker, more natural, as it were, she really must exclude me from privileges intended only for contented, happy little children. "What does Bessie say I have done?" I asked. "Jane, I don't like cavaliers or questioners. Besides, there is something truly forbidding in a child taking up her elders in that manner. Be seated somewhere, and until you can speak pleasantly, remain silent." This is in the first person. We're saying I. We're saying me. I, me are the pronouns so far. A small breakfast room adjoined the drawing room. I slipped in there. It contained a bookcase. I soon possessed myself a volume, taking care that it should be one stored with pictures. I mounted into the window seat. Gathering up my feet, I sat cross-legged, like a Turk, and having drawn the red moreen curtain nearly close, I was shrined in double retirement. Folds of scarlet drapery shut in my view to the right hand. To the left were the clear panes of glass, protecting but not separating me from the drear November day. At intervals, while turning over the leaves in my book, I studied the aspect of that winter afternoon. Afar it offered a pale blank of mist and cloud. Near, a scene of wet lawn and storm-beat shrub, with ceaseless rain sweeping away wildly before a long, lamentable blast. I returned to my book, Bewick's History of British Birds. The letterpress thereof I cared little for, generally speaking, and yet there were certain introductory pages that, child as I was, I could not pass quite as a blank. They were those which treat of the haunts of seafowl, of the solitary rocks and promontories, by them only inhabited, of the coast of Norway, studded with isles from its southern extremities, the Linderness or Naze to the North Cape, where the northern ocean in vast whirls boils round the naked melancholy isles of farthest Toul, and the Atlantic surge pours in among the stormy Hebrides. Nor could I pass unnoticed the suggestion of the bleak shores of Lapland, Siberia, Spitzbergen, Nova Zembla, Iceland, Greenland, with the vast sweep of the Arctic zone, and those forlorn regions of dreary space. That reservoir of frost and snow, where firm fields of ice, the accumulation of centuries of winter, glazed in alpine heights above heights, surround the pole and center the multiplied rigors of extreme cold. Of these death-white realms I formed an idea of my own. Shadowy, like all the half-comprehended notions that float dim through children's brains, but strangely impressive. The words in these introductory pages connected themselves with the succeeding vignettes and gave significance to the rock standing up alone in a sea of billow and spray, to the broken boat stranded on a desolate coast, to the cold and ghastly moon glancing through bars of cloud at a wreck just sinking. I cannot tell what sentiment haunted the quiet, solitary churchyard, with its inscribed headstone, its gate, its 2 trees, its low horizon, girdled by a broken wall, and its newly risen crescent, attesting the hour of eventide. The 2 ships beclaimed on a torpid sea I believe to be marine phantoms. The fiend pining down the thief's pack behind him, I passed over quickly. It was an object of terror. So was the black-horned thing seated aloof on a rock, surveying a distant crowd surrounding a gallows. Each picture told a story, mysterious often to my undeveloped and understanding and imperfect feelings, yet ever profoundly interesting. As interesting as the tales Bessie sometimes narrated on winter evenings when she chanced to be in good humour, and when, having brought her iron table to the nursery hearth, she allowed us to sit about it, and while she got up Mrs. Reed's lace frills and crimped her nightcap borders, fed our eager attention with passages of love and adventure taken from old fairy tales and older ballads, or, as at a later period I discovered, from the pages of Pamela and Henry, Earl of Morland. With Bewick on my knee, I was then happy at least in my way. I feared nothing but interruption, and that came too soon. The breakfast-room door opened. "Boo! Madam Mope!" cried the voice of John Reed. Then he paused. He found the room apparently empty. "Where in the dickens is she?" he continued. "Lizzie! Georgie!" calling to his sisters. "Joan is not here. Tell Mamma she's run out in the rain, bad animal." It is well I drew the curtain, thought I, and I wished fervently he might not discover my hiding-place. Nor would John Reed have found it out himself. He was not quick either of vision or conception. Men. But Eliza just put her head in at the door and said at once, "She's in the window seat, to be sure, Jack." Right. And I came out immediately, for I trembled at the idea of being dragged forth by the said Jack. "What do you want?" I asked with awkward diffidence. "Say, what do you want, Master Reed?" was the answer. "I want you to come here," and seating himself in an armchair, he intimated a gesture that I was to approach and stand before him. John Reed was a schoolboy of 14 years old, 4 years older than I, for I was but 10. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Got it. Large and stout for his age, with a dingy and unwholesome skin, thick lineaments, in a spacious visage, heavy limbs, and large extremities. He gorged himself habitually at table, which made him bilious and gave him a dim and bleared eye and flabby cheeks. He ought now to have been at school, but his mamma had taken him home for a month or two on account of his delicate health. Mr. Miles, the master, affirmed that he would do very well if he had fewer cakes and sweet meats sent him from home. But the mother's heart turned from an opinion so harsh and inclined rather to the more refined idea that John's sallowness was owing to over-application and perhaps to pining after home. John had not much affection for his mothers and sisters, and antipathy to me. He bullied and punished me, not 2 or 3 times in a week, nor once or twice in a day, but continually. Every nerve I had feared him, and every morsel of flesh on my bones shrank when he came near. There were moments when I was bewildered by the terror he inspired, because I had no appeal whatever against either his menaces or his inflictions. The servant did not like to offend their young master by taking my part against him, and Mrs. Reed was blind and deaf on the subject. She never saw him strike or heard him abuse me, though he did both now and then, in her very presence, more frequently, however, behind her back. Habitually obedient to John, I came up to his chair. He spent some 3 minutes in thrusting out his tongue at me as far as he could without damaging the roots. I knew he would soon strike, and while dreading the blow, I mused on the disgusting and ugly appearance of him who would presently deal it. I wondered if he read that notion on my face, for all at once, without speaking, he struck suddenly and strongly. I tottered, and on regaining my equilibrium, retired back a step or 2 from his chair. "That is for your impudence in answering mamma a while since," he said, "and for your sneaking way of getting behind curtains, and for the look you had in your eyes 2 minutes since, you rat." Accustomed to John Reed's abuse, I never had an idea of replying to it. My care was how to endure the blow which would certainly follow the insult. "What were you doing behind the curtain?" he asked. "I was reading." "Show the book." I returned to the window and fetched it thence. "You have no business to take our books. You are dependent, mamma says. You have no money. Your father left you none. You ought to beg, and not to live here with gentlemen's children like us, and eat the same meals we do, and wear clothes at our mamma's expense. Now I'll teach you to rummage my bookshelves, for they are mine. All the house belongs to me, or will do in a few years. Go stand by the door, out of the way of the mirrors and windows." Wow. I did so, not at first aware that what was his intention, but when I saw him lift and poise the book, and stand in act to hurl it, I instinctively started aside with a cry of alarm. Not soon enough, however, the volume was flung, it hit me, and I fell, striking my head against the door and cutting it. The cut bled, the pain was sharp. My terror had passed its climax. Other feelings succeeded. "Wicked and cruel boy," I said. "You are a murderer. You are like a slave driver. You are like the Roman emperors." I had read Goldsmith's History of Rome, and formed my opinion of Nero, Caligula, etc. Also I had drawn parallels in silence, which I never thought thus to have declared aloud. "What? What?" he cried. "Did you say that to me? Did you hear how Eliza and Georgiana? Won't I tell mamma? But first..." He ran headlong at me. I felt him grasp my hair and my shoulder. He had closed with a desperate thing. I really saw in him a tyrant, a murderer. I felt a drop or 2 of blood from my head trickle down my neck, and was sensible of somewhat pungent suffering. These sensations for the time predominated over fear, and I received him in frantic sort. I don't very well know what I did with my hands, but he called me rat, bellowed out loud. Aid was near him. Eliza and Georgiana had run for Mrs. Reed, who was gone upstairs. She now came upon the scene, followed by Bessie and her maid Abbot. We were parted. I heard the words, "Dear, dear, what a fury to fly at Master John! Did ever anybody see such a picture of passion?" Then Mrs. Reed subjoined, "Take her away to the Red Room, and lock her in there." 4 hands were immediately laid upon me, and I was borne upstairs. What's the Red Room? There's something in the back about it. There's all these little numbers next to other words. That's number 7. An implicit parallel between the Red Room of Jane's confinement and her infusing fit, and Bertha Rochester's attic prison and her madness in chapter 20, from a crux of modern feminist criticism explored in Sandra M. Gilbert and Susan Gabbard's The Mad Woman in the Attic, the woman writer and the 19th century literary imagination. And Elaine Showalter's A Literature of Their Own, British women novelists from Bronte to Lessing. The violent dynamic of crimson and white, intimating blood, erotic, love, and death, characterizes latest significant domestic spaces. Whoa. So far, I'd say much darker than a Jane Austen novel for sure, although I feel like she may have just sort of hinted and touched on it a little tiny bit in Northanger Abbey. That was fun and spooky. This sounds dark already, very dark. So it sounds like I need to get some crimson things. It sounds like I need to start watching Guillermo del Toro movies. Loved Crimson Peak. Loved Pan's Labyrinth. This is making me think of those things. Wow. The beginning of our journey through this novel. Jane Eyre. Shall we continue on? Happy reading, and maybe ta-ta seems like too happy for this book. I've got to get a better sign off. Maybe like happy reading. I don't know. I'll think about it. Cheers. Bye.